What's going on, everyone? Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres, with Scoop Duck on 3, coming to you on Monday, October 20th, 2025, coming off a big victory for the Oregon Ducks as they travel all the way east to Piscataway, New Jersey, and come away with a 56-10 win over the Rutgers Scarlet Knights to bounce back in fairly epic fashion after taking their first loss of the season to the Indiana Hoosiers at home in Eugene. But before we get to today's episode, this episode is brought to you by the Derman Law Firm PC. Attorney Jacob Y. Derman is a car accident lawyer who fights against the insurance companies for injured Oregonians. If you've been in a motor vehicle accident, call or text Jacob directly at 541-241-6470. Jacob was born in Medford, raised in Bend, went to college here in Eugene, and now takes cases across every county in Oregon. He's a diehard Ducks fan, hasn't missed a single game in person, home or away, every season. Well, we're back here on the Ducks Dish podcast to break down another game, another win for the Ducks, and I'm joined by Scoop Duck owner and publisher Justin Hopkins. J-Hop, how are you?
Good, doing good. A lot easier to hop on these and break down a win, so excited to dig into this one.
Glad we have another one to talk about. It wasn't much of a game, if we're being totally honest. I mean, outside of the opening two drives for Oregon, it really wasn't much of a game. We had the Gary Bryant fumble on the opening drive for the Ducks, and if I was Oregon, I was hoping that they were going to take the ball to start things off, but Gary Bryant fumbles, and Rutgers is able to get a field goal on the ensuing possession, their first offensive possession, but after that, nothing was doing except for one touchdown from Rutgers. So there's a lot of places we can kind of dive into this one, but I think the story of the game really starts with Dante Moore. Just him bouncing back. I know he was taking a lot of criticism after that Indiana game, but threw for almost 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, 15 for 20, and he just looked dialed in and was surgical.
Yeah, I mean, we called for, Will Stein to feed the studs, right? Let's get back to that kind of football, that kind of offense. I think, getting back to running the football was something that we called for, and they certainly did that. They ran the ball incredibly well against Rutgers, and I think that's a twofold. The reason I mentioned that, you were talking about Dante Moore. I mean, Oregon is just better, and Dante Moore is better when they stick to the run. When they make the defense respect the run, it opens up things and allows Dante to just kind of do those things he does and make those throws. So I just love to see that they kind of got back to basics. Obviously, it's Rutgers, right? Let's not take too much away. They beat Rutgers. Rutgers isn't very good. Have a lot of problems on offense. Have a lot of problems on defense. But I mean, as we saw Friday night, if it's hard to travel on the road, right? Florida State lost to Stanford late Saturday night. Miami lost Friday night. Those travel trips can be tricky and dangerous. So, like you said, the Gary Bryant Jr. fumble on the second or third play, and you're like, oh my God, no, this isn't happening. And then of course they got fire and it never looked back. So it was good to see.
I like the feeding the studs part that you mentioned, because Oregon really got back to what they do best. Kenyon Sadiq got 2 touchdowns, Noah Whittington, a hat trick of touchdowns, Jordan Davison and De'Aaron Hill Jr., and DeCorian Moore. So Oregon's trio of true freshmen on offense all found the end zone. So the Ducks, at one point, there was discussion on the broadcast, Justin, about them potentially setting a new program record for most offense in one game. I think the record is 777. It was set in 2015, but I can't remember who the opponent was. But that's okay. They got to 750 yards, I think was the final number on the day. But they were really getting everything they wanted to. Dante Moore wasn't sacked a single time, so they were able to keep him upright. He did throw one interception, but I don't really think that one was too much on him. It was a quick slant route, and the defender was just able to jump that one. Maybe you hope for a little bit more of a push from Gary Bryant on that target that he got. But I mean, really not a whole lot to talk about if we're looking at this Oregon offense. I think a lot of the discussion was really around the defense and how they were able to dominate. That the two small notes or takeaways that I would maybe have for the offense in this game was Cooper Perry played in his 5th game, so he's burned his red shirt as a true freshman. He's one of Oregon's touted wide receivers that the Ducks signed in the 2025 class. And then how about the offensive line? I think the offensive line played a tremendous game against Rutgers. Again, keeping it in perspective, Rutgers is not the same front as Indiana, which is just such a weird sentence that I didn't think we were going to be saying in the offseason, Justin. But what kind of caught my eye from the offensive line is that the Ducks, at one point in the second half, made the decision to kick Alex Harkey into right guard and trot out Janoris Wilson at right tackle. And we've kind of, I think, agreed that the right side of the offensive line is not up to the level of the left side of the offensive line. So I'm just interested to see how far this offensive line can take Oregon. And I think it's a good sign if you're a Duck fan to see that the staff is at least willing to experiment with some other combinations.
Yeah, I mean, I've written before, and did again today. One of my favorite things about this staff is what I just call the humility, right? There's a lot of times that, just as fans or even, as writers like us, you see stuff like, man, why aren't y'all doing this? And it almost seems too obvious, right? It's probably like, man, I just don't know football the way these guys do. But then, those coaches refuse to make those changes, and, ultimately it becomes a problem. That's not really Dan Lanning. He does a really good job, I think, of going out there and saying, hey, look, we got to get better at this, or we need to do this better. And they change it and they do it, or they try it. So, I think a lot of us were curious, if there might be a possibility of them actually trying, to move Harkey into right guard in a game. I know they've done it at practice. We've written about that on Scoop Duck. We know that, putting Janoris Wilson out there is something that they can do. It was just kind of nice to see it in the game and kind of see what the results were. And again, it's Rutgers, right? Game was out of hand. It's Rutgers, but that's where you can try it. I love to see, how they had a game plan for Dante Moore and how he was able to execute. And then, it's just like you said, 750 yards. I mean, like what wasn't working, right? I mean, what wasn't working for Will Stein Saturday night? So, and again, I think, you and I have opened the show about the offensive performance, probably mostly because defense has been good so far this year. I mean, I know the defense gave up 30 to Indiana, but they were on the field a lot. I think, this Oregon defense has been pretty consistent and pretty good all year long. Obviously, Rutgers wasn't doing very much against Oregon on Saturday night.
Yeah, it was a long day for that Rutgers offense, and I don't have a whole lot more to add on Oregon's offense. We can transition to a little bit more of the defensive talk if you'd like, Justin. I was going into this game maybe hoping to get a bit more clarity on the running back rotation for Oregon. Jordan Davison and De'Aaron Hill Jr. both had awesome days, but they both only touched the ball, I think, 8 or 9 times combined between the two of them, and Jordan Davison was one of 200-yard rushers for the Ducks, as Noah Whittington eclipsed the century mark with 125 total yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Jordan Davison only touched the ball 3 times on offense, and he got 100 yards and a touchdown. So I still think that Jordan Davison has proven that he can take on a larger workload. He's been out on the field a lot when they've had 2 running back sets, even 3 running back sets. The Ducks were without Jayden Lamar in this game, as he was listed as out in the injury report that was released before kickoff. So maybe that played into it a little bit. But I mean, Jordan Davison's taken everything that the staff has thrown at him, and I think he's more than capable of taking on a bigger role for the Ducks. So overall, it was a tremendous day. It was an explosive day. I think just as the game was going on, there were graphics with little notes about how many 20-plus yard plays or 15-plus yard plays the Oregon offense had, and that number just kept going. So it was just an uber efficient day at the office for Will Stein, and the defense had a tremendous performance as well.
Yeah, and that was the best Noah Whittington has looked since the beginning of the year. And I understand it was Rutgers, but I do think I love Jordan Davison. I love De'Aaron Hill. I'm a fan, no doubt about that. I still think Noah Whittington is Oregon's like most consistent and best all around back, and that means being able to run the ball, being able to catch the ball, and being able to be an efficient blocker, for the quarterback. So I think he does all those things really well, pretty sure-handed for the most part. And so, I think seeing him back there kind of makes that room obviously better with a player like that. And again, I mean, here you are, maybe probably trying not to run up the score on Rutgers, and it's just like, it's just happening. You don't need, I mean, it didn't matter who they put back there. It didn't matter what the play call was. It was going to be for 20+ yards, like every other play. So, a tough thing for Dan Lanning to navigate, because I think it was pretty clear last week. You could see that Lanning and Shiano, have a lot of mutual respect for each other. They were very complimentary of one another. So I think the last thing Lanning was trying to do was get out there and boat race him. But I mean, you still got to run plays. You can't just start kneeling down in the second quarter. So I don't know. But yeah, I mean, the running back rotation, it's not getting any clearer, and I don't think it'll be any clearer. I do hope they figure out, who the hot hand is and stick with them, because I think at times one of my criticisms is there is a hot hand and they seem to go away from it at times. Not Saturday night against Rutgers, but I felt that way against Indiana a little bit. So, hopefully they can continue to kind of fine tune that.
That was just the kind of day it was. Like everything was working, it felt like, for the Oregon offense. So hopping over to the defensive side of the ball, we knew that this was a Rutgers team that has some capable playmakers, specifically at the wide receiver position, a quarterback that likes to push the ball down the field in Ethan Kalik-Manis. But he finished the day 8 for 25 with 79 yards and 2 picks, and he was sacked 3 times. And the Ducks also forced 2 fumbles. No, they forced 1 fumble. And that was from Aaron Flowers, who
Flowers has been a revelation this season. Really emerged. I know that the secondary is really good. We talk about Brandon Finney a lot, and I get why he's been tremendous as a true freshman. But when you look at what Aaron Flowers has done back there, he almost, I don't know if he's ever missed a tackle, but I mean, he rarely misses tackles. Does a really good job helping in run support. Don't really notice him getting beat deep often, if at all. So, between him and Kennedy and Thieneman, all 3 of those safeties, 2 safeties and a nickel / star, really have been an upgrade over last season. I mean, those guys have done a tremendous job in all phases of the game. And it's just, it's pretty crazy to think how good this secondary is. And it's all 5, new starting players for Oregon.
And that feels almost like an anomaly, Justin. That's not something that you find all over college football, guys that just started playing together and are playing that well. And I think you have to give a tip of your cap to the whole staff, and particularly Chris Hampton and the rest of the secondary coaches, because you really have to find the right kind of guy to be able to bring in and do that. And Kennedy's been great. I wrote a piece about kind of some of the biggest surprises and superlatives midway through the year, and Kennedy's been phenomenal for the Ducks, just super, super consistent. And then you have Brandon Finney Jr., who's been a lockdown corner, one of the very best in the sport. So the Ducks continue to look really good on defense, and that's exactly what you want to see. We got a little bit of clarity as far as the linebacker picture. I think Dylan Williams is pretty clearly Oregon's 4th linebacker now, and he played a lot. And Bryce Betcher led the team in tackles again, so kind of up to his usual doings. And not a lot of success for Rutgers running the ball either. So it just continues to be business as usual for the Ducks right now.
Yeah, I think, I think it's pretty clear that Devin Jackson's the weak link there, right? I know, Jerry Mixon has made some good plays. Obviously, Bryce Betcher's the leader of the defense. And like you said, led the team in tackles. He was kind of everywhere on Saturday. So you're not replacing him. Like you said, now you start to see Dylan. We were kind of waiting to see, like, okay, would it be Braden Platt? Would it be Kamar Matudi? Would it be Dylan Williams? And, it's clear that Dylan Williams got the most play Saturday night and kind of came up. Looked pretty good, too. Like, I mean, I don't want to take too much away because it was Rutgers and the game was out of hand, but he was out there making some plays, and that's a positive development because, I mean, we both know, and everybody listening knows that, linebacker's the weak link on Oregon's defense, and there's no question about that. So if they can, continue to get a little bit better there, obviously it's just going to make the team better. But that secondary playing the way they are, defensive line played well once again, is doing its job. Definitely very good against the run, and just like to see a few more sacks. I know they were able to get some sacks Saturday night, struggled doing that against Indiana. If they could consistently maybe get a few more sacks, a couple more sacks in the game, that might be another area where they can clean some things up too.
And I'm there with you. I think you want to see some more sacks from a front that was as vaunted as Oregon's was. And a lot of guys got some more notable playing time. I think that was another one of my takeaways, is that the Ducks used this blowout to build on some depth. You saw Tion Gray get a lot of run, Ashton Porter as well. And even though you didn't see as many sacks, you did see 8 tackles for loss from Oregon, and they were also disruptive in that interception when they You know, I don't think he got a hand on it, but like Amari Washington was jumping at it. And I think it bounced off his shoulder pad and went up in the air. And then Blake Purchase grabbed the interception there. So you want to see more sacks, but at the end of the day, that front is still being very disruptive, and that is a net positive. Also saw more of Naeem Offord out there. I don't know if he was banged up, but he had an Instagram post that was like basically kind of along the lines of "I'm back," and he was out there quite a bit. So maybe the Ducks are trying to kind of get some more rotations at corner as well. But overall, just another really solid day from the defense.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I know for the people listening to this or watching this or whatever you're doing. I mean, how many ways do we talk about? Like, it's just again, and I wrote about this. Let's flip the coin, right? Let's say that Oregon goes to Rutgers after losing to Indiana and is sluggish. Our conversation today is much different, right? It's good to see that the staff made those changes, was able to keep the team focused, was able to respond from a loss as a young team. We got to remember that you're on the road playing, 3,000 miles away. Like, we're sitting here having a great conversation because of the way Oregon dominated Rutgers, but it's always kind of important to remember, like, okay, what would our conversation and our tone be like today if Oregon had gone out there and struggled? Would we be pushing the panic meter? What's kind of the talk there? So you can always do what ifs, right? It's just good to kind of take that dose of medicine to really appreciate, like, okay, that didn't happen. Dan Lanning got this team prepared, back on track, learn from the losses to Indiana. And now that we continue to see the team that we kind of think Oregon is, which, looks like a top 5 team in the country right now.
And they're not far out from that, right? I think they're number 6 now after the latest AP poll came out, which we can choose to take stock in or not. But in a world of chaos, when you had number 2 Miami lose to Louisville, that was obviously not something a lot of us expected. Maybe some Oregon fans expected it because, Mario Cristobal is going to give you one of those every year. But this can kind of segue into our last point today. In a world of chaos where the coaching carousel is already churning, Billy Napier got fired by Florida. Oregon's looking real stable right now. And I think as long as you can hold on to Lanning, that's the secret sauce. You want to hold on to Will Stein and Tosh Lupoi as well. Tosh Lupoi is having his best year as a Duck, I think. But that was kind of just the last thing I wanted to talk about here, Justin, is that Oregon keeps winning. They keep sending guys to the NFL, and they keep getting really good players. And it doesn't look like Dan Lanning is going anywhere. So with Florida firing Billy Napier, you got him and James Franklin as 2 of the biggest openings now, with Penn State also on the market.
Yeah, I mean, here we are, October 20th, right? And there's some big jobs that are already open, probably going to be some more. This is shaping up to be one of the crazier years in the coaching carousel. And we're kind of at an interesting point here. I think some of these athletic directors, some of these schools, these boosters are really going to need to start looking at, not only the hires they make, you really need to look at the hires you make. You need to start looking at some of these buyouts that you're putting into contracts with these guys. You need to start looking at, a little harder, like, yeah, you make maybe, for instance, I thought Florida did the right thing last year, keeping Billy Napier, and I know he was on the hot seat. And I say that I'm not a fan of Florida, so it doesn't hurt my feelings if he loses 5 games or whatever. I don't care. But what I meant by that and what I mean by that is just that when he had a highly ranked recruiting class, he had a really young team that's a pretty highly, ranked team overall in terms of talent. When you make that, it's going to be real interesting to see what happens with Florida. Like, you've made that move. How many of these guys jump in the portal? How much of your recruiting class do you lose? Obviously, Oregon fans are immediately talking about Dallas Wilson, right? Like, oh my God, Dallas Wilson, he's coming home. We don't know. There's a lot of questions about all those guys. It doesn't mean that the Florida team just blows up, but it might. And so if it does, and I'm not talking about Dallas Wilson specifically, if that team does blow up and a lot of that talent leaves, now you're looking at Florida and you're like, man, like, this is a really expensive and big issue. Now you're going to have somebody to come in and spend the next 3 or 4 years rebuilding the roster and getting it ready. How patient are you going to be for that guy? Do you just continue this vicious cycle? Because it feels like teams like Florida State and others have kind of been on Nebraska, have been on these vicious cycles for what feels like a decade now of, okay, next year's a year, or give me 2 more years. I got to get more guys in here. Or, yeah, I'm kind of talking about you a little bit, Lincoln Riley. Next year's your year, right? You guys are finally showing improvement, but it's year 4 or whatever it's been, since he's been at USC. So it's just interesting, and it's fun to be an Oregon fan talking about it because it's not your team. You're like, my team's good. My coach isn't going anywhere. He's locked in. Coaching staff is locked in. Future is looking great for a long, long time. It's nice to be on that side of it. But it's incredibly just interesting. I mean, Hugh Freeze is probably gone at Auburn next. I mean, what's UCLA going to do? They fired their coach. They fired Deshaun Foster, and they won the next 3 games. Like, I don't know. It's just wild. It's wild.
It's super wild, and it feels like a complete 180 for Oregon, right? When you see Willie Taggart and Mario Cristobal both come and leave, and go off to what they thought at the time were greener pastures. But it is fun to be able to kind of sit back and just watch the chaos unfold. And I'm excited because we're getting closer to that early signing period in December, Justin, and the transfer portal window. And a school like Florida is a perfect example. They do a lot of their recruiting in the Southeast. Oregon recruits the Southeast, but not nearly at that level. So if those guys enter the portal, it's kind of like a second chance to get some of these guys. And Oregon has been very successful getting guys from regions they don't typically get high schoolers from, which I think we could do a whole nother podcast on. But I just wrote a story over on Scoop Duck about, some recruits that I think Oregon could go after now that Napier has been fired. And that's one that I think is worth reading. So we'll continue to see what happens here in the wild west of coaching carousel with it starting so early here. We could do a whole episode just on that. But Oregon's doing their thing. They get a terrible Wisconsin team at home this weekend in Eugene for their homecoming. You got the Grateful Dead tie-dye uniforms, and should be another fun week covering the Ducks for you and me.
Yeah, like you said, another chance for Oregon to get a win. Kind of continue building on what feels like maybe they're building on from Rutgers, and then get ready because then we got some. At Iowa becomes a tricky game. I know USC just lost to Notre Dame. They'll come and they'll play Oregon tough. Washington is still Washington. I know that obviously they're coming out of the weekend with a loss, but everybody's going to come and give Oregon their best shot moving forward. So still some really good football games left on the schedule, and frankly, the Ducks don't have a lot of wiggle room. You could probably lose one game, but then you're going to, if you do, you're starting to kind of get, are we still going to make the playoff? Are we not? It's going to be an interesting year. Let's not worry about that. Let's just get more wins.
You just got to play the games that are in front of you. You got Wisconsin this week, then you're on a bye. Then you head to Iowa City for your first road trip to Kinnick Stadium. And that should be a fun one against the Hawkeyes. I'm excited for that one, Justin, but a little bit of a shorter episode today. But still good to hop on here and talk about Oregon's game against Rutgers. Sorry if we had some technical issues. We're still trying to mitigate those and navigate them on my end. So apologies for that. But if you guys want to find more of Justin, you can follow him at jhopkinssd. Find me anywhere at mtorres sports. Subscribe to the Scoop Duck on 3 YouTube channel. And while you're at it, come and check us out at scoopduck.com. $1 gets your subscription started, and you get a year of access to The Athletic. Not right in there, but complimentary. And it's just a great place to be. So Oregon's rocking and rolling. Justin and I are rocking and rolling over at Scoop Duck. And we'll catch you guys in the next episode of the Ducks Dish podcast.